Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow. We are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa political entertainment. So we're switching up the roster today.
We did.
John is not with us, and we have our fearless leader, Chris Ingstad, with us. Chris, welcome back to the ITR Live podcast.
It's really good to be here. And again, to make it clear, I'm in here because John is out of town.
Yes.
Alan was not available. It's because
Good.
I'm here.
Yeah, we'll let the listeners decide after today whether or not you should be considered the third string or not. But
doesn't matter. You guys are stuck with me for a while.
That's right. Should we call this the Hendrickson Group in John's absence?
I think everybody knows that formally or informally, this is the Hendrickson Group. So, yeah.
Okay. We do have some housekeeping items we have to attend to before we can move on. And actually, this wasn't what I planned, but I have intended to start reminding people at the front end of the podcast that we are on video.
Yes.
So I think usually when I talk to folks and they say, hey, I listened to the podcast, I really like it. I think they're audio listeners, but we are on YouTube. We are on Rumble. And so if you want to see our smiling faces or our scowls, depending on the topic, go check us out over on YouTube or Rumble.
Yeah, you all are in for a treat.
That's right. Well, we aspire for big things with our video content around here.
That's right.
Now, we don't want to spoil anything, but we do
Nope.
try and get a little bit better at it each time out. At some point, we may even get away from the backdrop of the door and the white wall and the white table. But baby steps. Okay, but the housekeeping item that I did want to get to is we need to go back to a segment that we have forgotten about here at the ITR Live podcast, which is a construction update.
Yeah.
So
well, we haven't forgotten.
As listeners that are new to the program might not know, we followed along the construction in our courtyard outside of Studio 130 here for almost a year as they built this thing out here, which in the end, we didn't even know what it was for months.
I think probably we just called it a patio.
The patio. So there's and actually it's like two different patios that are the same. Some landscaping that died and came back, and we've seen at least one person out there doing it. And so that was over, and we had people kind of checking back, well, what's going on with the construction?
Right.
Well, that's done. But we got a whole new construction going on around here.
Yeah.
So the neighbors next door to us here at Studio 130 are doing a complete remodel, not even down to the studs.
And expansion.
And expansion. I mean, they're pulling the concrete pad out of the building down to, and so complete rebuild.
Chris, how is it that we know so well what they're doing?
Well, because we hear it all the time. Now, one of us has an office that's right next door, like share a wall with this construction. So at least we had a lot of heads up about the construction, right? So they just showed up one day and started tearing out walls. But we've had jackhammers. Yep. A couple times a day I'll hear like a multi-tool going against my wall, even if you know what that is, really high vibration, tool. That's really fun to listen to.
So, yes. I mean, it's some version of Sawzall grinder. You pick it.
Right. They're also the odors. It's not just the sound.
Yeah.
But one day we had the wall and the ceiling actually.
Those machines don't run on solar power, Chris.
No, they don't. They don't.
They got engines.
And so we actually had part of our ceiling fell in one day. Mm-hmm. Last couple days we've had the AC go off and the fire alarm go on. We got big dumpsters out in front of the door. It's been a really good time.
No, it hasn't.
No,
it's not been fun at all.
No,
not pleasant.
Productivity here at Studio 130 has dipped a little bit because of that. So anyway, we'll give you an update as it goes along. But it's been a challenging few weeks here in the studio.
It hasn't been easy, but it hasn't stopped us from working.
We are gritty.
Mm-hmm.
We are survivors.
Mm-hmm.
We're overcomers. Mm-hmm. And so we're still, despite all of those challenges, here to give you the content that the people expect from us.
Yeah. They need. Yep.
Good. Okay. I guess before we go any further, I did want to mention, and maybe we'll have a chance to look at this a little more. It's not necessarily a political issue, but the flooding up in northwest Iowa.
It's really bad.
Is really, I think, as significant as anyone can imagine up there. I mean, entire communities underwater. And I think
people are cut off. Power is down.
Yeah, and these aren't floodplains.
water.
This isn't areas that these folks are accustomed to flooding.
No.
A lot of folks don't have flood insurance. This is going to be a real challenge for, I think, the state as a whole for quite some time.
Yeah, I was talking. Some of our folks have family members up there. Some of them have been up there recently. And the one that I just keep thinking through is Spencer. Spencer, I'm going to call it Main Street, but the main highway, that runs north-south right through the middle of Spencer. And I've been on that, I don't know, dozens of times. One really lovely town, right? Like
Spencer's great.
Yes, it really is. And that river's kind of picturesque as it runs through the middle there. And I never stopped to consider that thing flooding and taking out, but it has, and unfortunately, it's done a lot of damage. And not only is Spencer very nice, but they've continued to grow it, continue to improve it. And my understanding is that river has taken out several of the new things, for lack of a better term, that they've just finished up there. And so, and I don't think Spencer's unique in that regard. Nope. I think that's caused a lot of damage all over up there.
And I think even downstream, there's other communities where the river's going to be cresting here in the next day or so, where we'll see the other folks get to share in that difficulty. But we'll I'm sure we'll have more to learn about that as we go along. But anyway, we are thinking of you folks up there in Northwest Iowa. Okay, I want to touch briefly on, Chris, because we talked about this last week, the Des Moines Register poll when Alan was in here.
Yep.
And then we also talked about some of the numbers in a pre-production meeting.
Yep.
Which they promptly took back down off of the website.
They're back up there though, they're fair game to talk about.
And that's some of the survey data, the survey work that they did on issues. And I don't want to dig too far into this, but I want to make this point again about what's important in this election.
Yeah.
Okay? And this isn't us saying it's important. This isn't Republicans saying it's important or Kim Reynolds saying it's important. This is the people of the state of Iowa telling the Des Moines Register what's important. But they asked the question.
By the way, the editorial board of the Register doesn't seem to listen to that, but that's
no. But so their own editorial board's at odds with their data. So they asked this question, and they cast in terms of your vote for Congress, which is kind of the generic way to ask this. But how much does this issue relate to you personally? Is it a critical issue, important but not critical, or not that important to you personally?
Yeah.
This is sort of most important issue, most important question. Number one on this list, inflation. 64%, 2/3 of Iowans say this is critical. Okay? Number two, government spending and the national debt, which really are related in many ways, as we've been saying over and over on the podcast, is that the profligate spending by the federal government is what's driving inflation.
Yep.
But we can see very clearly that those are the issues that are most top of mind to Iowans. Number three on this list, interestingly, tied for number three, is immigration.
Yep.
Okay, so these are important issues. It's what the election's going to be decided on. It's not going to be decided on abortion or climate change or election laws or LGBTQ policies.
Yeah.
Those are not
They're
anywhere.
They're further down the list.
Further down the list. So what I think is interesting, though, to point out is, okay, so we know that it's inflation, government spending, immigration. How does Joe Biden rank on those? What do folks think of that? So let's go back. And Al and I touched on this a little bit, but I want to give some perspective on it as I fumble through all my papers here. Okay.
You're too prepared. You care too much.
I know.
Chris.
I'm much better when I don't prepare.
Yeah.
Well, or at least I'm easier at hiding that I'm not prepared and that I know something.
Yes.
How do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling issue? So, number one issue is inflation. Iowans, 69% of them disapprove of the job he's doing on inflation. So not only is it the number one issue by and far, it is also an issue that by well over 2-1, they are not happy with Joe Biden.
At the moment, that's not boding well for him.
No, that's a toxic mix. Next issue is immigration. 68%, almost the exact same number, disapprove of the job he's doing in immigration. Again, I think we know just from the top line numbers that Iowans, at minus 18, don't want to vote for Joe Biden. But I think this shows this paints a picture that his political issues in Iowa are even more grim than a minus 18 number would show, which is remarkable. Yeah. And I mean, this is Iowa numbers, but I think you can extrapolate some of this across the rest of the upper Midwest as the, national media focuses on places like Wisconsin and Minnesota even. So long ways to go there. Okay. So we have another issue here that I sort of brought up and then you took and ran with a little bit, but the issue of preschool funding, right? Or maybe not preschool funding.
That's what the headline of the article yesterday said.
Right. So there's a bit in Axios that was about some I think there were ARPA dollars for that were being used in Des Moines for preschool funding at a few.
Let's clarify. I mean, it is the city of Des Moines.
Yes.
Using ARPA dollars to pay for more preschool through the public school system.
That's right.
So if you,
but only to a few schools, not to all of them.
And those programs already existed. If I'm understanding it right, and I don't claim to be an expert on this, because we would have said don't use ARPA dollars for that sort of thing anyway. But they were taking what was essentially, I think, half-day programs and turning it into full-day programs.
Okay. Well,
again,
don't gloss over, because the part that got me going, don't just skim over it. I know you want to because you've got a lot on your notes that you want to cover. ARPA dollars are one-time dollars.
Well, let's. Or
do you, if you want to come back to that and dunk on that later.
Let's start there. You run with that.
Well, look, we said this over and over at the time as local governments were racing to start programs with ARPA dollars, which were one-time money from pandemic relief that, look, charitably were meant to what? Prop up the economy, get things jump-started again. But too many times we saw new ongoing programs started with a one-time source of money. And, hey, guys, this money's not always going to be there, and yet here we are.
And by the way, this is not uncertain that the money's not going to be there.
They knew from day one.
This is ARPA. Here's your handout, and that's it.
Right. So they started, whatever you think of the validity of the program, and we're going to get to that, they knew the money wouldn't be there someday. And they would either have to cut the program, find dollars to continue it, or presumably expand it to everyone.
And so, yes, that's sort of the first rule of good budgeting, right? And we are not the only organization who touts that rule. Right. Don't use one-time money for ongoing expenses. Right. And we talked about this as ARPA was wrong. We talked about this way before ARPA and COVID. Federal funds come into a community, you spend it, they pull the funds, and then you just cry bloody murder and want somebody else to pay for the thing that you never should have bought in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you took that and ran with it and have done some extra reading and looked deeper into the issue. And we're not necessarily preschool education experts, but there's some basics I think we can probably pick up pretty quick.
The article was, in a sense, fine, and in a sense, I had a big issue with it because we need to decide what is the thing that we're talking about, because you've got the city of Des Moines using ARPA dollars and trying to send them to the public schools. Mm-hmm. You've got the public schools now going to the state and asking for more money than this. And throughout that article, Chris, they kept interchanging the words early childhood ed, which we think of as preschool, right? And child care, which is something completely different. And I think if we're honest, and I'm not saying parents are right or wrong for this, but a number of parents look at the school system providing their child care, right? Well, what are we going for here? Are we talking about early education and education outcomes, and that is a debate and a discussion we can have, or are we talking about child care, right? Because those maybe should have two separate funding sources, and I think they are throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. So we need to decide what it is we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I think that's been a challenge for many of us it just feels, it's for the kids, so we have to fund it. It's almost like that's the thing. But is this the highest and best use of scarce taxpayer dollars as we try to maximize student outcomes, right? Isn't that what we're about? Whether we're education policy experts or not, like we have a finite amount of dollars.
Well, we are until they start talking about what it means for employers and childcare, because those are two different things. And so again, what do you want to do? And if we are talking about educational outcomes, why is the city getting into that business? I mean, Chris,
wait, that wasn't a serious question. But I mean, I think you're right.
That kind of is a serious question. Like, city, why are you meddling in education? Chris, you brought it up. It's not completely unlike the universal basic income, where you're creating a new government program or funding stream from some level of government who's never involved in that.
But okay, going back to universal basic income, social services, think broadly as welfare or whatever related sort of benefit we give, was always meant to be either federally or state delivered, not locals.
Right.
And yet here are the locals trying to get in to do it. Education, K-12 education, public K-12 education is delivered by our school districts or, and
it's a state and local school board partnership.
Or if it's higher ed, then we do that through the regents or whatever, but we don't deliver education through our local cities. That's just not how we do it.
Nobody's looking to the school boards for police and fire. Right.
So good point.
It's all about growing government, and people wonder why their property tax is going up. It's because so many levels of local government keep spending money on things they shouldn't be spending it on.
And I don't know what going back to when they created this program, but the city of Des Moines, and slightly in their defense, they get pulled a lot of directions by their various constituencies, which led them, I think, to getting sucked into universal basic income in the first place. But they got sucked in on DART funding. Ultimately, they ended up giving dollars to the bus service here in central Iowa because they got, guilted into it over time. I wonder if some of that's also at play here, but everybody stay in your lane, right?
Yes.
Let the schools worry about preparing the kids for school.
Well, let me go there. I think there is a real danger in taking kids that were in maybe a private preschool setting or daycare setting or whatever you want. And again, churches and other religious institutions, other just sort of private secular institutions have provided preschool and or daycare for years, right?
Yeah.
And so if all we're really trying to do now is tack on an extra year or two in the public school system, that's a real dangerous thing from a cost perspective, because when you start throwing them into that K through 12 system, you want to expand that K through 12 to be, pre-K or 3-year-old preschool through 12. That is an expensive system. You've got a unionized workforce. You've got negotiated contracts and pay scales that are set and firm that don't offer much flexibility. You've got licensure requirements. That is just going to be about the most expensive solution is to force them into the existing public school way.
Right. And then yes.
And can I just put a point in here to show that we're somewhat practical thinkers, Chris? Tax cuts and deregulation alone will not make child care or early ed, and I would continue to say I think those are actually two separate things. They don't make those things completely possible. I mean, Chris, as parents, we know that it takes multiple adult hands to take care of multiple little kids. That's always going to be labor intensive, and it's always going to be expensive.
Right.
So, but how can we do that without just growing government? Because the reality, Chris, is probably trying to do this. We are trying to crowd out the private sector. We're trying to crowd out the sense of community. We're frankly trying to crowd out family and shove them into one of the most expensive, government entities there are.
At one level, it feels like, and I don't know that it's conscious necessarily on part of the left, but trying to find ways to have the state, meaning, not the state of Iowa, but government, the state, take the place of our existing community family institutions.
That's exactly right.
So we can get the government to provide all of these service that we either did inside our own homes, inside our churches, inside our local communities, our extended families. We need to get government to provide all that and crowd out the individual or the family. And so I think there's a fair amount of that going on here because government is, the government knows best. Government is the source of everything good. We reject that. There are things that government needs to do because individuals cannot do them themselves, or at least in a civilized society, we do better police and fire and courts and roads.
Yes.
And yeah, okay, fine. I don't know that 3-year-old preschool necessarily rises to the same level on that list. Not saying it doesn't have some value,
Yes.
but we're saying that maybe we don't need high-cost taxpayer-funded
For all of it.
all of it, right? Yeah. And maybe there's a better way. So I guess that's where I come back. It feels like trying to have government do everything instead of the things it needs to do the most.
If government really wants to get involved, find a way to facilitate this, right? If it really is a child care issue, work with the employers, come up with some system. Maybe it's a joint private public partnership of dollars flowing into something. Find ways to offer flexibility. Find ways to facilitate payments or the tax treatment or something of the providers and the ones who receive services, rather than government coming in and saying, like, we will take care of all of it.
Well, yeah, and we could quickly move on to the whole idea of government-funded childcare and tax credits and everything on that. I mean, if we're going to go down the path that all of this is a child care mechanism, well, then I suppose folks all over the state of Iowa want to know why they can't get a piece of the action, and it's not just these folks.
Correct.
Because it's not just folks in parts of Des Moines that can't afford their own child care. And why isn't if that is the need, which is child care, why can't the employer help fund that? Why does it have to be the taxpayers?
There's a bigger societal question we don't have time to get into in terms of what that answer should be. But I believe the answer is not shoving them into our K through 12 institutions and just saying, taxpayers, take care of it for us. Correct.
Well, and I think, again, we could go on a whole long, side journey here, but, maybe there's a better way for all of this, where the free market and individuals decide how to get what's best for their own child. That's going to be, if you believe in any sort of, free market, free enterprise, is going to be done more efficiently and probably done better at letting folks seek out those solutions for themselves than trying to have government create it all and a top-down, inefficient, bloated, bureaucratic mess.
Yep.
So, and I think that extends not just to preschool. I think that goes to all education.
Yeah.
Is let the free market decide what education looks like in the decades to come, than trying to hold on to a legacy system that is clearly becoming a little long in the tooth.
Yeah.
That's
it?
Frankly, it? Oh, okay.
Well, I think when you got the right answer, let our K through 12 system evolve too.
Yeah.
There are plenty of really talented people who care about kids and they're trained to help them.
Yep.
Let those schools, let those institutions, let those programs evolve too.
Yep.
Let them go and do their thing.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else on that subject that you...
No, I just thought that the article in itself, you could read into it and you just start talking yourself into doing this for the kids. And I'm really going, like, we're talking about 4 different things here.
Yeah.
And convenient that we're just swapping terms in and out like it's Mad Libs, and each one of those things probably deserves its own discussion.
Well, I know it's quote unquote for the kids and we're supposed to just sign up for whatever, but we should still have a critical eye towards any of it.
Yeah.
Anytime they're spending our money for whatever,
do you know
it might be the most noble purpose, but we ought to still ask the question.
Do you know why? Because we'll probably get back to where we are right now, where the money has run out and we go, now what do we do?
Correct.
Well, some of that money running out could be addressed at the start by spending it a little more smartly, or not just open blank check to begin with.
And so whether it's at the Capitol or whether it's in your local community, when folks are trying to make the responsible, grown-up spending decisions of saying we can't do all of this stuff, remember stories like this. Is that sometimes you can't do it, and you need to be smart on the front end and say, nope, you know what? The bill's going to come due, and we're not going to go down that path.
Yes.
And so maybe,
as usual, you've said it better than I was trying to.
Right. So, I mean, here, okay, maybe I'll put it this way. Kudos to those legislators out there and city council members and mayors and boards of supervisors and school board members that said no. Mm-hmm. When they had the big pot of funny money dropped in their lap, that they didn't just go and grow government with it. They found other smart ways that, okay, we've got the money, and if we're not going to give it back, Let's find something smart to do it. So kudos to all of you out there that did it the right way. And one other thing that I have to finish on, and I'm going to try and bring this full circle before we sign off. We talked at the front end about these issues in the Des Moines Register poll. The number one issue on the minds of Iowans is inflation. And the one thing that they're the most dissatisfied with Joe Biden on, and by extension Democrats, is inflation. And what caused the inflation that we are struggling with today?
Pumping free money into the system.
Free money through ARPA. And hey, let's not make no mistake. When Donald Trump was president, he did some of this too. Not nearly on the scale as Joe Biden and the Democrats. But all of that flood of funny money that they just printed drove up costs. The number one driver of inflation that we are all mad about, that we are all dealing with, is because of Joe Biden and the Democrats. And so it's not just having a program that the money runs out for. That program that has to end is the driver of the inflation that we're all paying for. So we're paying for the debt and we're paying for it at the consumer prices.
Yep.
We were right in the front end,
Yep.
We said this.
Yes.
Okay, well, the bill's come due.
Yep.
And it's going to keep coming due with a $40 trillion federal deficit.
Yep.
Or debt.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm fired up. We're 25 minutes into the episode, and I'm finally fired up.
You said that these were the dog days and there wasn't much to talk about.
Well, I will. Okay. What there is to talk about is getting real warm in Studio 130.
It's all of these hot takes, Chris.
It is. It's hot takes and a hot studio. And I think, with that having said,
Can I play the John Hendrickson role and interrupt you then and
say
one more thing?
One more thing. Great, yeah.
Just in case people were wondering what John Hendrickson has to think about these Des Moines Register poll results, we've got a new feature on the website called the Hendrickson Report.
Yes.
It's sort of John's rapid reaction to some of these things. Yeah. So go to itrfoundation.org, check out John's latest takes under the Hendrickson Report, and you can see what John thinks about those Des Moines Register issues.
All right. Well, yes, because I hear over and over from folks out there, they want more from John.
Yep.
So that's where you get it.
Yep.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming back. Hopefully we can do this again because in John's absence, you are sorely needed here on the podcast. So hot takes as usual. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.